what I have here today with us is these, the Tforce Yuan. It's quite a peculiarly named IM from, of course, China by the name, and it's the TLDR of this IM is probably going to be it's a decent IM, a decent no nonsense IM. I guess that's quite a trend right now. Decent no nonsense IM that isn't particularly very good in one part, but it's decent all over. Just I guess a jack of all trades, I guess, but master of none. So this is basically it. It's kind of like the Starfields, although they do really hit the mark on its tonality and its tuning. These are very good, however they are not, I guess, not in the level of Starfield's total balance. I think though the Starfields and the Aria have one-upped these on its tonal balance. However, most of my review is going to be about technical performance, and this is why I have these two IMs here with me. The Sound Hot Mirror and the Tin T2s. This might be surprising if you're new in this channel, but what I find is these two is actually very technically proficient for its price, and at a price range above of their price. I guess at around $180, $150. I don't think there are a lot of IMs that's going to outweigh these on its technical performance. But what I would like to add in at this comparison is probably this. It's probably going to be, let me pull it out of my case first, is this, oops, this is the Automatic ER2XR. I forgot I have one of these. And it's somewhat of a tonally excellent IM. The technical performance here is not bad either, so it's going to be a good comparison. So that's probably going to be the TLDR. For build quality, I think this is a very good, well built IM. The fitting is quite good also. It has this kind of gold colored nozzle with black filters, and you got a few ear tips. By the way, this is the final version of the Yuan, of course. I do also have the pre-final version, which looks exactly the same as the final version, but sounds quite different. You also have the usual set of ear tips. You got the foamies right here, and you have the white ball right here. So yeah, not the most high quality type of ear tips, although the case looks very beautiful. I think it's made out of actual genuine leather, but I don't know. Don't quote me on that. It looks fantastic, it feels fantastic, so I have zero complaints of the accessories you get from the Yuan. Comparing to the pre-release version, the pre-final version, I don't think this should be in any of your wish list, or maybe for a few of you. The simplest version of the comparison between these, this is less bassy, yet it's also shoutier in its mid-range. So it's the less bassier, and it do really need the bass shelf here. These really needs that because of the problem I'm going to go through later. Yeah, these are less bass and shoutier. That's it. So I'm not gonna recommend that, but this is it's actually quite decent IM, I guess. So that's it for the build quality. The cable is very good. The cable is well made. It's very well-made cable. Yeah, it's better than a lot of other cables, and it also doesn't tangle very easily. So it's a very good cable. It's not sticky at all. So yeah, yeah, that's it for the build quality and accessories. The comfort here is also good, and the sound, the general sound quality and general tuning of this IM is going to be mildly V-shaped. It's going to be not harmonish. It's quite more V-shaped than it is harmonish. So it has that elevation at 4K, the 4K region. The usual peanut gain. If we look at the graphs of a lot of IMs, we usually have the peak at around 3K or 3.5K. For example, like the Starfields, the Blessing 2s have that, the peak around there. However, these have the peak at a bit later, around 4K, which means it's going to be a bit leaner in overall tonal balance. It's going to be a bit leaner overall, the sound. So it's a bit more V-shaped. You do have quite a bit of elevation, the bass region, and for the bass, it's quite a average speed in terms of transient response. It's not as fast as the Sound Hard Mirror nor the T2s. It's probably about the speed of the Etymatics, and it's not really the fastest type of bass. However, the sub bass here is actually quite a bit textured. However, it's the mid bass region. It's not really that texture. I think I would still. The dynamics here in the bass region is not the most phenomenal, and you do really notice it when you try to compare these with either of these two, and these have lower bass volumes than the Yuan, and you actually can hear a bit more texture coming out from these two IMs rather than the Yuan, especially if you bump up the bass here to the levels of the Yuan. I think it's a bit more well resolving, I guess, than the Yuan. The transient response here is, the attack here is not very fast. Its attack is a bit it's a bit blunt, but it's not very blunt like when you listen to a lot of like the KZs or the CCAs. It's not very blunt like that, but it's a bit less sharp and less. The sense of immediacy is not as quick as the Sound hardware nor the 10T2s. The Sound hardware seems to have a bit more decay, slightly more decay in the bass too. How about the similar level of decay as the Tforce Yuan. However, the 10T2s is faster in both attack and decay, which might sound very punchy but anemic at the same time. So I'd much prefer the texture of the bass of the Sound Mirror. However, the delivery of the punch is better of the 10T2s. These don't have both of them, in my opinion. The bass here is okay in terms of texture, it's okay in terms of delivery. However, it's not the most dynamic type of bass that I've heard, definitely not. Considering the price is about $120, I think it's fine. I guess it's not the worst. It's not a deal breaker. It's not for me, at least. The mid range here is quite lean, from what I've mentioned before. It's somewhat safe. It's somewhat very relaxed. However, it's not the thickest type of mid range that I would expect a Starfield would have, but these are quite a different IM. If you've listened to the Starfield and you like that warmish type of mid-range, I think these won't give you that. However, if you listen to the Sound Hard Mirror, you do experience that type of leaner type of mid-range. However, the Tforce is not quite as lean as the Sound Hard Mirror. So if you've listened to the Hard Mirror and you think oh, this is too much, it's too analytic for my taste. I would prefer a bit more body. I guess the Yuan Li is good for you, and you think the Starfield is a bit too warm, it's a bit too weighty, I guess the Yuan Li's mid-range would be perfect for you. Or if you've listened to the TNT2s and you would think you would prefer a bit more upper mid-range and less lower mid-range, so the Yuan Li would suffice, I guess. For treble region, I think it has dips there, so I don't know if it's actually sound. The mid-range sound a bit leaner, so you would expect something a bit more with a bit more elevation in the treble region. Usually brighter IEMs like the other sound has that. However, the treble here is actually not very bright. However, they do have quite significant peaks and dips there. So for a few instruments, however, the harmonics there it's not terribly imbalanced. I think it's quite good actually, the relations of the peaks and the dips there. So you might hear some instruments sound a bit darker than what you consider neutral, and some instruments sound a bit brighter than what it is neutral. However, you don't have that sense of this instrument sound very wrong or sounds very weird, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess that's for the treble region here. It's sometimes it's kind of have that little bit of sibilance there, but not at the point of annoyance. Actually, it's much safer than these two treble region. So yeah, and it doesn't have that gritty type of presentation in the Etymotix ER2XR, definitely. However, the mid-range, I haven't compared it to the Etymotix. Now, the mid-range of the Etymotix is a bit more similar than the ones in the Blessing 2s or the what do you call it? The Starfields, where it has a bit more body to them. However, here it's a bit less, I guess. It's also a bit less forward in its presentation. So yeah. For technical performance, overall it's not very dynamics. The dynamics here is not very good. It's not very engaging in this presentation. It's very relaxed. You might feel this IM to be a bit more boring than what you prefer. But it's very good IM for relaxation, I guess, for relaxing and watching ASMR or something. It's quite a decent IM for that. However, for music that need a little bit more energy to them, I don't think this is going to be very good for those. I would prefer, if you listen to a lot of EDMs, I would just go with the iBass or IT00, or if you listen to a lot of more energetic type of presentation of vocals or something, I think the KXXS would be a bit better for you. So yeah. So for detail here, it's also not that fantastic, I guess. It's okay, I guess. It's average. The presentation of detail here is not. It's definitely not the most detailed IM that I've ever heard. It's even a bit less than the TNT2s and the Sound Hard Mirror overall. It's slightly grainy in its presentation. It's not the treble region. It's not as grainy as the Moondrop Aria. However, it's a bit less grainy than that. Maybe the detail is a bit at the level of the Moondrop Starfields or the KXSS. Maybe between those two. It's probably about as slightly less resolving than the Etymotix ER2XR2, so it's definitely not the most detailed. However, the soundstage here is actually pretty good. It's a bit wider, slightly wider than the Sound Hard Mirror, not as wide as the TNT2s, definitely wider than the ER2XR. So yeah, it's not the widest type of soundstage, but it's still a damn wide type of soundstage. Imaging here is not as sharp too. It's not as clean. It's not as precise as probably the Sound Hard Mirror. Is a bit more like the TNT2 type of imaging, which is not the best type of imaging. The depth here is also not as good as it has its own hardware, so it's still good. However, it's not as good. The Etymotics soundstage and imaging is also not that good. Maybe it has a bit better precision, but I think that is also due to the very narrow type of soundstage that they have. But so these actually have, for its price point, I think it's quite average. I think it's at the level of the Starfield or the KXXS. However, it's not very precise, not very clean for its soundstage and imaging. Soundstage is wider than average though. The separations also. And I guess that's it probably. Maybe I've already mentioned about the transient response already, so yeah. That is for the review of the Tforce Yuan Li. It's just an okay. If you're gonna buy it, you're gonna buy it. It's okay. It doesn't do things that is particularly very good or particularly very bad. So yeah, it's a good relaxing IM. Might get a bit boring, though I kind of like it. That's it for the review. See you next time. Godspeed.